Edward the Confessor. On June the 8th, 1042, Cnut, King of England and Denmark, passed away and was succeeded in England by his adopted heir, Edward the Confessor. Cnut was the son of the Danish king, Cnut the Great, who conquered England in 1016. When Cnut passed away, Cnut initially inherited the throne, but he was forced to share power with his half-brother Harold Harefoot. It was only after Harold's death in 1040 that Cnut was able to take the throne in England. However, Cnut's reign was short-lived, as he died in 1042 without an heir. His successor in England was Edward the Confessor, who was Cnut's half-brother and had been living in Normandy since his youth. Edward was welcomed back to England as king and became known for his piety in the building of Westminster Abbey. His reign had a significant impact on English history, particularly regarding the succession issues that rose after his death. Edward the Confessor, born 1003, died 4th January 1066, was the King of England from 8th of June 1042 until his death, right before the Norman conquest. He was the son of King Athelred the Unready and his Norman wife Emma of Normandy. Edward was exiled to Normandy in his youth after his family was overthrown in England, where he was raised in the Norman court and developed close relationships with Norman nobles. Despite this, Edward became an important figure in English history and is known for his deep piety and religious devotion. He was responsible for building the Westminster Abbey and was canonised as a saint following his death. However, his reign was also marked by political turmoil, including a crisis in 1051 and 1052, when Earl Godwin and his family were briefly exiled and then reinstated to the royal court. Edward had no children, and his death triggered a succession crisis that ultimately led to William the Conqueror's invasion and the Norman conquest of England. Nevertheless, Edward the Confessor's legacy has resonated throughout English and the world, and he remains an important figure in the canon of English and saints. The Tunguska Event. June 30th, 1908 marked the Tunguska Event, a massive explosion that occurred in Siberia and is believed to have been caused by the impact of a meteorite or comet. Feast your eyes on one of the most significant explosive events to take place in human history, the Tunguska Event. On June 30th, 1908, a massive explosion occurred near the Tunguska River in Siberia, Russia. The impact was so colossal that it flattened around 2,000 square kilometres of forest, with an estimated force ranging from 15 to 30 megatons of TNT. This event has created massive curiosity and scientific interest in discovering the root cause of the explosion. Various scientific studies and research have been conducted to find out what caused this explosion, with theories ranging from meteoroids, comets, to small black holes. The event has also sparked more curiosity in scientific research on the topic of asteroids, comets, meteors and other similar space bodies. Scientists are now working on finding potential early warning systems and effective mitigation strategies in case such impacts occur again. With the help of modern technology and scientific advancements, researchers have conducted a thorough investigation of the Tunguska event. Although no definitive answers have been found yet, further efforts are underway to uncover and understand the truth behind this enigma. Scuttling the German fleet. June 21st, 1919 was when Admiral Ludwig von Reuter of the German Navy scuttled most of the German ships interned at Scapa Flow, a natural harbour in Scotland, to prevent them from being taken over by the British. Admiral Ludwig von Reuter was a German admiral who commanded the High Seas Fleet in World War I. He is best known for the scuttling of the German fleet, which took place in Scapa Flow, Scotland in 1919. The event occurred after the armistice was signed on November the 11th, 1918, when the entire German U-boat fleet was demanded to be surrendered according to the conditions of the agreement. The Allies had not yet decided what to do with the surface ships of the German High Seas Fleet, and it was decided to intern them in Allied or neutral ports until their fate could be agreed upon during peace negotiations. However, on June 21, 1919, since there was a threat that the German fleet might be seized by the Allies and used against Germany, Rear Admiral Ludwig von Reuter made the daring decision to scuttle the fleet. Von Reuter ordered the German sailors to open valves and flood their ships, causing them to sink. The event resulted in the loss of 52 of Germany's remaining 74 warships, and von Reuter himself was taken prisoner by the British. This was a fascinating event that was an end note to the conclusion of World War I. D-Day. June the 6th, 1944, was D-Day, the beginning of the invasion of Normandy by 1 million Allied troops to liberate Western Europe from German occupation. D-Day was the largest amphibious invasion in military history, which took place on June the 6th, 1944. The operation, codenamed Overlord, brought together the land, air and sea forces of the Allied armies. The Allies used over 5,000 ships and landing craft to land more than 150,000 troops on 5 beaches in Normandy. The invasion was originally scheduled to begin the day before, but was postponed for 24 hours due to foul weather over the English Channel. Allied airborne troops began dropping behind enemy lines just after midnight on June the 6th, with the aim of blowing up bridges, sabotaging railway lines, and taking other measures to prevent the enemy from rushing reinforcements to the invasion beaches. The precise number of German casualties on the day is unknown, but they are estimated to be between 4,000 and 9,000. Despite heavy casualties, D-Day is largely considered the successful beginning of the end of Hitler's regime in Western Europe. Here are some key facts about D-Day. The Allies carried out substantial military deceptions, codenamed Operation Bodyguard, to confuse the Germans as to when and where the invasion would take place. This included the use of dummy parachutists that had firecrackers to simulate gunfire. They even had a name, Rupert. The importance of D-Day often overshadows the overall significance of the entire Normandy campaign. Establishing a bridgehead was critical, but it was just the first step. In the 3 months after D-Day, the Allies launched a series of additional offences to try and advance towards Germany. The Normandy invasion was one of the great turning points of 20th century history. An immense army was placed in Nazi-occupied Europe, never to be dislodged. Casualties. The casualties on both sides during the D-Day invasion were significant. The exact number of casualties suffered in the invasion of Normandy will never be known. However, the following are the estimated casualties based on available data. Allied casualties. United States 135,000, including 29,000 killed and 106,000 wounded and missing. British, Canadian and Polish ground forces 83,045. French civilians between 15,000 and 20,000 killed. Total Allied casualties for the Normandy D-Day invasions, 550,200. German casualties, 320,000, including 30,000 killed, 80,000 wounded, and 210,000 missing. On D-Day itself, there were an estimated 10,000 casualties, including those who were killed, wounded, missing in action, and prisoners of war. The casualties on both sides were a high cost of the Normandy campaign, which was the largest seaborne invasion in history and a turning point for the Allies against the Nazis. The Eastern Front. By the time the Allied troops came ashore in June 1944, the Russians had already fought 3 years of devastating war on the Eastern Front, taking and inflicting appalling casualties. The enormous and pivotal battles of Stalingrad and Kursk had been fought and won, and the Axis retreat towards Germany was well underway. The fighting on the Eastern Front was terrible and incessant, brutal beyond belief, and more combatants were killed on the Eastern Front than in all other theatres of World War II combined. The Soviet Belarusian offensive, Operation Bagration, was launched just after Overlord and destroyed the entire German Army Group Centre, which also kept German forces tied down in the east and unable to go and defend at Normandy. Tiananmen Square, June the 3rd and 4th, 1989. In 1989, the Chinese government was facing calls for democratic reform and greater political freedom from students and intellectuals. The protests began in Tiananmen Square, which is the symbolic centre of Chinese political power, and gradually grew larger each day. Approximately 1 million people attended the protests at their peak. However, on the night of June the 3rd and early morning of the 4th, the Chinese government declared martial law and began a violent crackdown on the protesters. Troops and tanks were sent in to clear the square by force, resulting in a deadly clash with the protesters. The Chinese security forces fired on unarmed protesters, resulting in numerous deaths, injuries and arrests. While the exact number of casualties remains unknown, it is estimated to be in the hundreds or thousands. The Chinese government arrested and imprisoned thousands of protesters.
Well, now there is a mood of terror at the center of the city and quiet in the north of the city. To the west of Tiananmen Square, about an hour and a half ago, troops fired into the air. It's not believed that they hit anybody, but they were trying to intimidate.
Imposed strict censorship and propaganda campaigns afterwards to prevent any discussion or commemoration of the protests. Today, the Tiananmen Square incident remains a sensitive topic in China, and the Chinese government continues to suppress any public discussion or commemoration of the protests. However, people all around the world remember the students and their call for democracy and human rights, and the incident remains an important part of history. In fact, one particular scene of a lone man standing in front of a tank and preventing its progression is one of the iconic symbols of the 20th century.